Okay, good day. Welcome. I'm Grant Cayley, the Chief Technologist for NetApp in the UK and Ireland. And I'm going to talk to you today around about how you can manage unstructured data at scale with NetApp StorageGRID product. There's a link at the bottom of the slides there. So if you'd like to access that, you can get more detailed information on the product and the capabilities. But we'll kick on and I'll provide you at least with an overview. So if you're not aware of object technology, it's really what all of the internet stores its data on. When you go and access videos, imagery in the internet, it's being stored in an object repository in AWS, in Azure, in Google. And those object repositories are really useful, particularly for an internet scale environment, because they enable the storing of unstructured data at scale with vastly simplified management, and then the ability to build policy and capabilities around about that data based on information that you stored when you wrote the object. And the use cases for this are really expanding. You know, initially it was really used for kind of archive and backup storage because of the scale of being able to store that. But now we're seeing it being used much, much more for things like application storage, data streaming, videos, etc., HPC environments, analytics data. If you're doing Lambda storage, for example, in the cloud, and that's serverless computing, you're probably accessing data from an object repository. Those are cloud object repositories. What StorageGRID is an on-premise object repository, and it has the ability of extending that environment to the cloud as well. So I think because of this kind of increasing evolution of using object and object workloads, there's a bigger demand on those platforms, and they're not always, well, at least the existing ones are not always able to deliver those capabilities. There's a much higher demand for higher performance from object repositories, for video streaming, for doing analytics across, for example, for delivering results in a timely fashion and not introducing latency. There's a much more of a requirement for flexibility and being able to use object repositories as almost a golden source of data, being able to build vendor neutral archives and this type of environment, but then apply policies for access to that data and enable dynamic policy and repolicing of information that's stored there. For example, GDPR information, if you store that information, you have to be able to manage it. You might want to change those policies over time. And then there's really the fact that this needs to be done simply, because we're now talking at storing data at a scale we were never used to dealing with. You know, file data before would deal with millions of files in directories and things like this, and that was very complex and difficult. Object technology is about scaling these unstructured data operations to billions of objects, and being able to do that anywhere from a few thousand objects to a few billion objects with the same simplicity, really, and that kind of low touch of operation. We really do see objects, as I mentioned, being the unstructured data storage of the cloud. You know, it delivers at the scale which the clouds provide. It provides access ubiquitously on a kind of a multi-tenant basis. You just need the kind of URL to the object to be able to access it with the right permissions to be able to do that. It's really designed to deliver 4 petabytes of data at scale, but that really pulls back into the enterprise and really helps us solve challenges as well around about storing data without the management required. And it's available to be accessed by an ecosystem of products that sit around about that object repository. Nobody deploys an object repository as a primary platform. The object platform always sits behind a kind of an application that requires access to object technology. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So NetApp StorageGRID product is the capability to deploy a software-defined object storage solution, which you can deploy on hardware, software, or connect to the cloud. And it provides, firstly, a really powerful policy engine, because when you write an object and when you store a file in an object repository, you attach metadata to it. That metadata describes its longevity, its confidentiality, whatever you want to assign to that object. NetApp StorageGRID has a dynamic policy engine that enables you to take actions based on the metadata that's associated with that object. For example, I write an object into my data center in San Francisco. The policy that's set means it has to be replicated to 3 other data centers around the world or around different countries. That policy would be enacted automatically. It's very simple to deploy and to enable these policies. And actually, the interesting thing about object technology is it combines, and actually NetApp StorageGRID combines the option for on-premise RAID to protect the data, but also erasure coding to spread that data protection across multiple locations. And because the architecture can scale to billions of objects, you literally have a repository that can be used for all of your unstructured data needs going forwards. And it is hybrid cloud connected, and I'll talk about that in a second. So the technology which NetApp have had, StorageGRID, we've had it in our portfolio for about 10 years, is very mature and industry leading in that respect. And if you look at what it provides for, the top layer of this is providing a repository to store your archive data, your backup data. It could be a tiering target from a NetApp storage array using fabric pool technology, for example, to tier hot blocks to object. It could be the back end for new applications that you're writing. S3 is becoming a more popular protocol to use for storing and accessing file data. It could be used as your compliant data repository because it can apply worm locking and security and deletion policies. It can be used to store compliant data as well. And then also it's used at scale to store rich media. We have a television company called ProSiebenSat in Germany who store many, many petabytes of video and imagery in their object store because it just makes it simple to access, to store, and to set policies to. But the important thing about the NetApp product, the StorageGRID, is that it's a software product of which you can use any storage on the back end. So you can use it as a NetApp appliance. It's all bundled for you there. You can deploy it on bare metal servers. You can deploy it with third-party storage. You could even include tape drives as part of the global namespace to have a tiering policy between active storage, SSD storage, colder storage, tape storage. And also it can tier to the public cloud as well. So you can mirror to the public cloud or tier to the public cloud and use their S3 services. And on the front end, you've got not just S3 and object access into the repository, you can also use our NFS and SMB gateway to provide you with capabilities there. So it's a very fully featured product in terms of what it can offer. The range of features it offers are here. I'm not going to go into all of them. They're all designed around about managing objects at scale, and making the platform fully serviceable in terms of what you would need to be able to access. And this puts it in an industry leading perspective in terms of its capabilities. I think the use cases for object technology are the really interesting ones. It started off at the top supporting enterprise backup solutions, and we integrate with all of the major vendors there from a backup perspective. It then moved into customers using it for archive, and that kind of either vendor neutral archives or single source of data repository. But actually, you can integrate it into telephone systems. You can integrate it into your media asset systems, and we have partners such who will integrate those technologies for you with the front-end software products. It's being used for clinical repositories, for imagery, for radiology, for PACS systems. It can be used as a file storage device with a gateway product in front, such as those from the vendors like Cetera and others. But equally nowadays, the high performance nature of the object repository means it can be used for high performance computing, for video storage and video analytics, for accelerated data and file transfer. Varnish Software, for example, who provide great capabilities in that space around about content distribution and access. And it's being used for geoseismic and also across a range of back-end analytics platforms. So it is the next generation high performance, scalable file structure, unstructured environment, if you like, based on object technology. So it's got a lot of good use cases there to be able to access.